AITA for revealing DNA results, and serving an eviction notice at my son's 18th birthday party. The baccarat crystal chandelier hanging over the main table in the Hotel Red Scorton's event hall glittered with the same false intensity as the smile of my wife, Lauren. She was seated in her red velvet chair, celebrating her 45th birthday, surrounded by the upper crust of society. It was a party that had cost me $50,000, which I had paid for with a credit card she did not know was about to be canceled for a deliberate lack of funds. As I raised my glass of Dom Perignon to propose a toast, I observed the faces of the three young people the world believed to be my children. Mason, 22, Serena, 20, and little Logan, who had coincidentally turned 18 just yesterday. A glacial calm coursed through my veins, a sense of peace that can only be experienced by a man who has been holding his breath for 15 long, hellish years and is finally about to exhale fire. To my right, seated at the head table as a family friend and my children's godfather, was Cameron, my former boss and the CEO of the multinational corporation where I wasted 2 decades of my life. He was an arrogant 60-year-old man who looked at me with that patronizing self-assurance, patting me on the back and saying, "You've done a great job with this family, Jordan. You should be proud." He had no idea that I knew his secret, that every time he looked at my children, he was seeing his own blood, his own genetic traits replicated in 3 human beings whom I had fed, clothed, and educated while he took the credit and the pleasure without spending a dime. To understand the magnitude of the bomb I am about to detonate at this table, I have to take you back in time to a gray November afternoon exactly 15 years ago, when my world shattered in a clinical and sterile silence. Logan was 3 years old and had suffered a nasty fall at the park. He had split his forehead open and needed a blood transfusion during minor reconstructive surgery. I, being the devoted and worried father, immediately offered to donate, assuming my O-positive blood would be compatible or at least useful. But the doctor on duty, a young and meticulous man who knew nothing of social politics, pulled me aside with a furrowed brow and papers in his hand. "Sir," he said, "there is an error in our records. Or, well, it is biologically impossible for you to be the direct donor. The boy is a negative, and with your blood type and your wife's, which we have on file, the genetics simply do not add up." At first, I laughed. I thought it was a lab error. I demanded they repeat the tests, but when the second round confirmed the same thing, the laughter turned into a black hole in my stomach. I did not confront Lauren that day. I did not scream. I did something that would define the rest of my life. I hired a private investigator and conducted secret DNA tests on my other 2 children, Mason and Serena, using hairs from their brushes and saliva from their glasses. A week later, the results arrived in a yellow envelope that I opened in my car, parked far from home. Probability of paternity, 0% for all 3. All 3, not 1 or 2. The 3 children who carried my last name, to whom I read bedtime stories, were the product of a systematic lie. But the final blow was not discovering they were not mine, but discovering whose they were. The investigator handed me photos, hotel records, and deleted emails that Lauren, in her technological carelessness, had not removed from the shared server. Her lover for the past 20 years had not been a stranger. It had been Cameron, my mentor, my boss, the man who invited me to Sunday barbecues and laughed at my jokes. Lauren had been his second wife in the shadows, and I had been the useful idiot, the provider raising his secret offspring so he would not have to deal with divorce scandals that would cost him his fortune. My first impulse was one of pure rage, a desire to storm into the house with the papers in hand, scream the truth, file for divorce, and burn everything to the ground. But then my lawyer, a wise and shrewd man named Dr. Andrew, stopped me with a legal truth that froze my blood. "Jordan," he told me, "if you divorce now, the judge will destroy you. You have acted as the father to these children for years. The law presumes paternity by estoppel. If you reveal this now, the court will say that the best interests of the children are prioritized over biology. They will force you to pay child support and alimony. And since you earn a good salary, they will take 60% of your income for the next 15 years to maintain the lifestyle of another man's children. Do you want that, or do you want to truly win?" I asked him what I had to do. His answer was simple and terrifying. "Wait. Shut your mouth, swallow your pride, and wait." Wait until the last one of them turns 18. The day the youngest becomes a legal adult, your financial obligation ends. At that moment, and only at that moment, can you release the truth without it costing you a cent in future support. It is a 15-year sentence in an emotional prison, Jordan. Can you handle it? And I handled it. God knows I handled it. For 5,000, for 175 days, I woke up every morning next to the woman who despised me. I gave her a good morning kiss and went to work for the man who was involved with her, smiling, nodding, playing the part of the loyal employee and loving father. I paid for private schools, tennis lessons, orthodontics, and summer camps, spending an average of $80,000 a year on children who did not carry my blood. I watched them grow into miniature versions of Cameron and Lauren, arrogant, materialistic, and empty. Mason became a slacker who wrecked 2 cars that I paid for. Serena called me stingy if I did not buy her Prada bags. And Logan simply ignored me, always seeking the approval of his godfather, Cameron. Every time Lauren humiliated me in public, saying I was boring or unambitious compared to Cameron, I gritted my teeth and visualized this day. I visualized the calendar, counted down the days, and as I counted, I prepared my exit. For the last 5 years, under the guise of bad investments and company cutbacks, I began to liquidate my real assets. I sold my investment properties and moved the money to offshore accounts in the Cook Islands, untouchable by local divorce law. I refinanced the family home, this mansion where we are now celebrating, extracting 90% of its value in cash and hiding it, leaving the property with a massive debt that was in both our names but would soon be her problem. I accumulated cash, gold, and cryptocurrency. Legally, on paper, I am a man on the verge of bankruptcy. In reality, I have 4.5 million liquid dollars waiting for me in a new life. And today, yesterday to be exact, Logan turned 18. The clock on my sentence reached 0. I am free. Attention, everyone. I said into the microphone, the sound bouncing off the gilded walls of the ballroom, interrupting the conversations of the 200 guests. Lauren looked at me with annoyance, probably afraid I would embarrass her with a cheap, sentimental speech. Cameron continued smoking his cigar, smiling with that superior smirk. I know we are here to celebrate my wonderful wife, I continued. But I also want to take this opportunity to give a very special gift. A gift I have been preparing for 15 years. A gift that represents the absolute truth of our family. I gave a signal, and 2 waiters entered pushing a cart covered with a silk sheet. The room fell silent. Lauren sat up straighter, her eyes gleaming with greed, likely expecting a sculpture, a car, or a giant piece of jewelry. Lauren, Cameron, kids, I said, stepping down from the stage and walking toward them. You have always told me I am a predictable man, that I have no surprises. Well, I hope this changes your opinion. I pulled off the sheet with a theatrical flourish. Underneath, there were no jewels. There was a safe, ugly, industrial, and heavy, made of gray steel. A murmur of confusion rippled through the room. What is this, Jordan? Lauren asked with a nervous laugh, trying to maintain her composure. This is a joke, right? The keys to a yacht are inside. No, my dear, I replied, pulling a piece of paper from my pocket. Inside is liberation for all of us. Inside is the answer to why your children have Cameron's eyes and not mine. Inside is the reason I have endured your insults, your expenses, and your contempt for a decade and a half without complaining. Cameron's smile froze on his face. Lauren turned pale, as white as her designer dress. Jordan, what are you talking about? She whispered, and for the first time in years, I saw real, pure fear in her eyes. Open it, I commanded, handing her the paper with the code written on it. The code is the date I found out you broke my trust. November 11th, 2008. Go ahead. Everyone wants to see what is inside. Lauren did not move, paralyzed by terror. So I approached it myself, calmly and deliberately keying in the numbers. The mechanism made a sharp beep, and the heavy steel door swung open with a metallic groan, revealing its contents to everyone. There was no money, no gold. There were 3 blue folders from a genetics lab, a thick legal document with red tabs, and most importantly, a single small suitcase with my clothes already packed. The sound of the safe door opening echoed like a gunshot in the deathly silence of the ballroom. As I reached into the steel cavity to pull out the 3 blue folders labeled with names I no longer felt were mine, I could see sweat beginning to bead on Cameron's forehead. The cold, oily sweat of a man who knows his carefully constructed life is about to collapse under the weight of his own arrogance. Lauren, for her part, was trembling so violently that her champagne glass spilled onto the white linen tablecloth, creating a dark stain that spread like the moral corruption that had infected our marriage for 2 decades. I took the first folder, the one with Mason's name on it, my supposed firstborn, the 22-year-old who was looking at me with a mixture of confusion and the usual hostility he always showed me when I was not giving him money. I walked toward him, ignoring the murmurs of the guests who had already taken out their phones to record what they sensed would be the scandal of the century, and held out the document. "Mason," I said in a calm, almost gentle voice, "you have always complained that I never understood you, that we have nothing in common, that I am too strict, too middle class for your refined tastes. Well, it turns out you were right. We have nothing in common, not even our blood." Mason snatched the folder from my hand with a sharp gesture. He opened the document, and his eyes scanned the page quickly until they stopped at the final line, highlighted in neon yellow. I watched the color drain from his face, his lips parting in a silent no. "What is this?" he whispered, looking up at his mother. "Probability of paternity, 0%. Mom, what does this mean?" Lauren tried to get up. She tried to snatch the paper away, shouting, "Do not listen to him. It is fake. Your father is drunk. He is having a midlife crisis." But I was faster. I took out the other 2 folders and tossed them onto the table in front of Serena and Logan. "I am not drunk, Lauren. I am awake for the first time in 15 years. I am completely awake," I said, turning to the guests to ensure they heard every syllable. "What Mason has in his hand, and what Serena and Logan are reading right now, are certified DNA tests from the most prestigious lab in the state, with a verified legal chain of custody. Tests that confirm, without a doubt, that none of these 3 young people carry my last name by biological right. For 22 years, I have raised, clothed, fed, and paid for the whims of 3 strangers." Serena let out a hysterical sob, throwing the folder to the floor as if it were on fire. "Liar. You are my dad," she screamed, instinctively looking toward Cameron, toward the rich uncle who always spoiled her. And that is when I dropped the second bomb. "Ah, Serena, how ironic that you look to Cameron," I said, walking toward the head table where my boss sat petrified, the cigar burning down between his trembling fingers. "Because if you turn to page 2 of the report, you will see something interesting. You will see a comparative analysis of genetic markers. You will see that I had my suspicions, and that Cameron is a careless man who leaves coffee cups and used tissues in my office. I took the liberty of analyzing his DNA as well." The room gasped in unison. Cameron jumped to his feet, knocking over his chair. "Jordan, stop. This is illegal. I am going to destroy you," he roared, trying to use his CEO voice to intimidate me, the same voice he had used for years to keep me submissive at the office. But it no longer worked. He no longer had power over me. "Sit down, Cameron," I ordered with an authority that left him paralyzed. "Or I will project the photos of your trip to Cancun with Lauren in 2005 on that giant screen. The time you were supposedly at a conference in Tokyo, and she was visiting her sick aunt. I have the photos, the hotel receipts, the call logs. I have everything." Cameron collapsed back into his chair, defeated by the evidence of his own stupidity. I turned back to the kids, who were staring at Cameron in horror. "There you have it," I told them, pointing to the man sweating in his $3,000 suit. "That is your biological and moral father. The man who had an inappropriate relationship with my wife while I was working overtime for his company to pay for his children's schools." Lauren burst into tears, an ugly, noisy cry, screaming that I was a monster, that I had planned this to humiliate her, that how could I do this to the children on a day of celebration? "You raised them. You are their father in your heart," she shrieked, appealing to the same emotional logic my lawyer warned me she would use. "DNA does not matter. Love matters." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Love matters? Yes, I will grant you that. But love is based on truth, and our family was based on a 15-year fraud. And speaking of fraud, I went back to the safe and pulled out the thick legal document, the one with the red tabs. Here is the final gift of the evening, the one I have been waiting to deliver until today. Yesterday, Logan turned 18, which means that according to the laws of this state, my legal obligation for child support has officially ended for all three of them. There are no more minors in this house, which means I am no longer a hostage of the family court system. I handed the document to Lauren. It was the divorce papers, drafted 5 years ago, updated and filed with the court that very morning at 9 a.m. before the party. I am filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery and paternity fraud, I explained as she read the document with trembling hands. And thanks to the evidence I have gathered, my lawyer assures me that not only will I not be giving you a cent in alimony, but I am also suing you for the reimbursement of child-rearing expenses for the past 15 years under the claim of damages for civil fraud. I am demanding restitution for every dollar spent on schools, clothes, trips, and food for Cameron's children. The total sum, with interest, comes to $1.2 million. Lauren looked up, her eyes wide with shock. You do not have that money. We are broke. You said yourself the investments went bad, she yelled, trying to find a crack in my armor. The house is ours. You cannot kick me out. I smiled. The cold smile I had rehearsed in the mirror 1,000 times. Ah, the house, I said, looking around the luxurious ballroom. Good of you to mention it. You see, as part of my bad investments, I had to refinance the mortgage 6 months ago. I pulled out all the equity. The real money, Lauren, is in an account in the Cook Islands to which you have no access. What is left on the house is a $2.1 million debt that is in both our names. But since you will be getting the property in the divorce, because I am being generous and giving you the house, you also get the debt. And since I will no longer be paying the mortgage starting today, well, I suggest you ask Cameron for help. Although, knowing his financial history and his panic over scandals, I doubt he will want to finance your lifestyle now that everyone knows the truth. Cameron, hearing his name and the financial implication, stood up again, this time to flee. I have nothing to do with this, he babbled, adjusting his tie, avoiding the gaze of Lauren and his biological children. This is a domestic matter. I have to go. He tried to leave, but the guests, who had formed a morbidly curious circle around the table, blocked his path. No one wanted to miss the end of the play. Mason, the son who had always idolized Cameron, stood in his way. You are leaving? He asked, his voice breaking. Is it true? Are you my father? Did you know this? Cameron pushed him gently. Get out of the way, kid. This is not the time. That push was the catalyst. Mason, filled with rage and confusion, shoved Cameron back, and the great CEO fell onto the cake table, destroying the 5-tier vanilla and raspberry cake in an explosion of cream and shame. Chaos erupted. Serena was screaming, Lauren was trying to clean Cameron off, and Logan was staring into space in a state of shock. And me? I took my small carry-on suitcase from the safe, the only thing that mattered to me. Enjoy the cake, I said into the microphone one last time. It is already paid for, just like my freedom. I stepped down from the stage and walked toward the ballroom exit, feeling 15 years of weight lifting from my shoulders with every step, leaving them behind in the shipwreck they had built themselves. As the flashes from the guests' phones illuminated the scene like lightning in a perfect storm, I walked out of the Hotel Ritz-Carlton that night, breathing in the cold city air as if it were pure oxygen for the first time in 15 years, leaving behind the chaos of screams, tears, and shattered cake. I got into an anonymous taxi instead of my Mercedes, which I had conveniently left parked at the airport that morning. As the driver asked me where I was going, I took the SIM card out of my phone, broke it in two, and threw it out the window, cutting the last digital umbilical cord that tied me to the farce I had called a family. My immediate destination was not the Cook Islands yet. That would come later. My first stop was a modest suite in a business hotel near the airport, where I spent the next 3 days watching through reports from my lawyer and social media as Lauren and Cameron's empire of lies crumbled with the speed of a house of cards in a hurricane. The morning after the party, reality hit Lauren with the force of a freight train. As Dr. Andrew, my lawyer, told me, she went to the bank first thing, her eyes still swollen from crying and likely hungover, to try to access our joint accounts and fix the mess. She probably imagined she would find at least enough to pay immediate bills or hire a defense attorney. But what she found was an absolute financial desert. The bank manager, a man who had known our family for years and who had discreetly helped me execute Operation Exodus, received her in his office with an expression of professional pity and explained the situation with brutal clarity. Mrs. Lauren, as we explained to your husband 6 months ago when he authorized the transfers, the liquidity from the savings and checking accounts was used to cover the margins on failed investments in cryptocurrency and high-risk derivatives that he made. It was a lie, of course. There were no failed investments, only strategic transfers to armored trusts. But on paper, Jordan, the husband, was ruined. Furthermore, the manager continued, handing her a bank statement printed on red paper. The home equity line of credit on the mansion was used in its entirety. The outstanding balance on the original mortgage plus the second mortgage amounts to $2.1 million. And since Mr. Jordan has stopped the automatic payments as of today, the bank will begin foreclosure proceedings in 90 days if the monthly payment of $12,000 is not met. Lauren must have felt the floor open up beneath her. The house, her precious mansion, the symbol of the status she had so often humiliated me for, was not an asset. It was a toxic liability, a giant debt of concrete and marble that I had generously ceded to her in the divorce papers. She was the 100% owner of the house and 100% of the debt. But the banking humiliation was just the appetizer. The main course was her attempt to seek refuge in the arms of her true love, Cameron. My sources confirmed that Lauren went to the company's corporate offices that same afternoon, dragging Mason and Logan with her, probably thinking that Cameron, now that the truth was out, would assume his role as patriarch and save them with his $1 million checkbook. How naive. Cameron had not become a CEO by being a man with a heart, but by being a ruthless shark who cut his losses without blinking. When Lauren tried to enter his office, she found that her security pass had been deactivated. The receptionist, who used to greet her with coffee and smiles, coldly informed her that Mr. Cameron was in indefinite meetings and that unauthorized personnel were prohibited from entering. Lauren caused a scene in the lobby, shouting that she was the mother of the boss's children, which was a monumental tactical error. Cameron, anticipating this, had come down accompanied by his own legal and security team. The encounter in the lobby, recorded by security cameras and several employees, was devastating. Cameron, please, Jordan left us with nothing. You have to help us. They are your children, Lauren begged, pushing Logan forward. The boy was mortified, red with shame. Cameron did not even look them in the eye. He looked through them as if they were old office furniture. Ma'am, Cameron said, using the most formal and distant tone possible, I do not know what you are talking about. Those DNA tests your husband showed are fabrications, worthless paper with no legal validity. I have no children with you. And if you continue to defame me at my place of work, my lawyer will file for a restraining order and a libel lawsuit so large that your grandchildren will be born owing me money. Mason, the son who had always admired Cameron's strength, tried to intervene. But you always told me I was special. You gave me the internship, you gave me the watch. I gave you a position out of pity for the son of a mediocre employee. Cameron cut him off cruelly. And the watch was a promotional trinket. Do not get confused, boy. You are not my son. You are an administrative error. Security, get them out of here. The guards escorted them to the street as if they were criminals. And there, on the cold sidewalk of the financial district, Lauren finally understood the magnitude of her mistake. She had traded a loyal man who would have given his life for her, me, for a narcissist who only used her as entertainment. Cameron was not going to acknowledge those children. Doing so would mean admitting to his actions, which would trigger his own divorce from his official wife, an old-school woman from a family that owned half the company's shares, and it would cost him his CEO position. Cameron would rather see his secret children struggle than lose his executive chair. Desperate and out of options, Lauren played her last card, contacting me. During those 3 days, my phone, the new number only my lawyer had, remained silent. But Dr. Andrew received dozens of calls from her and the children. Serena, Daddy's princess, left crying voicemails. Dr. Andrew, tell Dad I am sorry, that I didn't mean those things. I need money for university tuition. They are going to kick me out if I do not pay by tomorrow. He promised to pay for my semester. Mason sent threatening emails, claiming he had legal rights. He did not. And Lauren went from rage to pathetic pleading. Tell him I love him, that we can go to therapy. That Cameron meant nothing, she said in one message, ignoring the fact that her nothing lasted 20 years and produced 3 human beings. Dr. Andrew, following my precise instructions, responded with a single official communication on the 3rd day, a certified letter informing them that the eviction from the mansion would formally begin in 30 days if they did not refinance the debt, an impossible task without my income, and that any attempt to contact me directly would be considered harassment and reported to the authorities. He also attached the itemized invoice for the civil lawsuit for paternity fraud, $1.2 million, payable immediately, with a preventive lien on any assets Lauren might have in her name, including her jewelry and her car, which was also in her name and therefore subject to seizure. On the 4th day, before leaving for the airport for my final flight, I decided to make one last stop, not to talk to them, but to see, from the safe distance of my rental car with tinted windows, the state of my old life. I drove to the mansion, the house I had bought with such excitement 2 decades ago, and what I saw was a portrait of decay. The once impeccable lawn was littered with trash. Mason's Audi had a boot on the wheel, probably from unpaid fines or a missed payment. I saw Lauren at the entrance, arguing with a man I recognized as an appraiser from a local pawn shop. She was trying to sell her jewelry, the very same pieces I had given her on fake anniversaries, likely discovering that many of them were not worth as much as she thought, or that the second-hand market is cruel. Serena was sitting on the steps, crying with her phone in her hand, probably realizing that her high society friends had blocked her after learning of the scandal. And Logan was kicking a ball against the garage wall in anger, the image of a boy who had lost 2 fathers in 1 week, the one he thought he had and the one he never wanted. I felt no pity. I searched for it within myself, for that compassion that had made me stay for 15 years, but I found nothing, only a clean and orderly void. I had paid my debt in full. I had served my sentence. They were adults now, and real life had just begun for them. I started the engine and drove away slowly, without a glance in the rearview mirror, straight toward the international terminal where a one-way ticket to Rarotonga was waiting for me, ready to start spending my $4.5 million on a beach where no one knew my name or my past. It has been 6 months since I landed at the small airport in Rarotonga in the Cook Islands, a place where the blue of the ocean has more shades than the human I can process, and where the concept of corporate stress or family drama is as foreign as snow. As I write this from the terrace of my beachfront bungalow, a gentle breeze rustling the palm trees and a local bean coffee steaming on the table, my lawyer, the indefatigable Dr. Andrew, has just sent me the final report via encrypted email. It is the legal and social epilogue to the destruction of the family I left behind. A 50-page document that reads less like a legal report and more like a modern Greek tragedy, where arrogance and deceit were punished with a surgical precision that bordered on the divine. Lauren's fall was as precipitous as it was predictable. According to the report, just 35 days after my departure, the bank executed the mortgage's acceleration clause upon non-payment. Since the property had a debt greater than its market value due to my strategic refinancing, a detail economists call an underwater mortgage, and I call poetic justice, Lauren could not sell it for a profit. On eviction day, a date my former neighbors probably marked on their calendars as the event of the year, the county sheriff arrived at 8 a.m. with an irrevocable court order. Lauren, in a final act of delusional denial, refused to open the door, screaming from the balcony that it was her house and that her husband, me, would come back to fix everything. She had to be forcibly removed, escorted by 2 officers while dragging a Louis Vuitton suitcase filled with clothes she no longer had anywhere to wear, under the relentless gaze of the entire neighborhood, who came out onto their lawns to witness the spectacle. Her friends from the gardening club, the same ones who drank my wine and laughed at my bad jokes, offered her no asylum. On the contrary, they recorded videos that circulated in the community's group chats, turning her into a social pariah. She ended up moving into a 1-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, a place with damp walls and bars on the windows, where she had to learn the hard way what it means to work. She got a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic, earning in a month what she used to spend on a single dinner. And the sweetest part of all is that the judge ruled in my favor in the civil fraud lawsuit. Lauren has been ordered to pay me $1.2 million in restitution, a debt she can never repay, which ensures that any extra cent she earns for the rest of her life will be automatically garnished, guaranteeing she can never get back on her feet financially. But if Lauren's fate was sad, Cameron's was a masterpiece of corporate destruction. I knew something Lauren did not. Cameron's official wife, Marissa, was the one who truly held the power. Her father had founded the company, and she owned 60% of the voting shares. When the scandal broke, and I made sure it broke by sending anonymous copies of the DNA results and photos of the affair to Marissa's office, the reaction was nuclear. Marissa did not scream or cry. She simply called an extraordinary shareholders meeting and removed Cameron as CEO for immoral conduct damaging the brand's reputation and violating the corporate code of ethics. Cameron was escorted out of his own company by security with a cardboard box in his hands, losing his seven-figure salary, his bonuses, and his stocks, which were bought back at a penalty price. But the real massacre was the divorce. Marissa had an ironclad prenuptial agreement with a draconian infidelity clause. Cameron left the marriage with no house, no stocks, and a paltry alimony. He lost the country club, the yacht, and the respect of the industry. Today, the great business shark lives in a rented condominium, trying to sell online leadership courses that no one buys. He is alone and bitter, blaming Lauren for the situation and for ruining his life. When they tried to find each other for comfort in their shared misery, they ended up screaming at each other in the street, blaming one another for their misfortune, proving that their love was nothing more than a shared convenience that did not survive the absence of money. And finally, the children, the collateral victims of their parents' lies, but also accomplices in their own arrogance. Mason, unable to accept that he was no longer the heir to a millionaire or the CEO's son, tried to maintain his lifestyle through credit card scams and petty fraud. He was arrested 3 months later for trying to sell a car that was not his and is now awaiting trial, facing a 3-year sentence. Serena had to drop out of her private university because obviously neither Cameron nor Lauren could afford the $40,000 semester fee. She tried to become an influencer to monetize the scandal, but the internet is cruel and the comments tore her apart. She ended up working as a waitress in a nightclub, living with 3 roommates and learning humility the hard way. The only one who seems to have a chance at redemption is Logan, the youngest. The day he turned 18 and saw the truth, he did the only sensible thing. He left. He enlisted in the army the next day, seeking to escape his mother's toxicity and the shame of his biological father. He sent me an email a week ago, brief and to the point. It said, "Thank you for taking care of me when you didn't have to. I am sorry I wasn't a better son. I won't look for you, but I hope you're happy." It was the only closure I needed. I close the laptop and take a sip of my coffee. The sun is setting over the Pacific, painting the sky with colors money can't buy. I have $4.5 million in the bank, a paid-off house on the ocean, my health, and most importantly, absolute peace of mind. I have no wife to lie to me, no one else's children to drain me, no boss to betray me. For the first time in my life, I am the absolute master of my own destiny. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I disagree. Revenge is a dish slow-cooked for 15 years, served ice-cold, and savored under the tropical sun, knowing that while I listen to the ocean waves, they are listening to police sirens and the calls of creditors. And that sound, my friends, is the best music I have ever heard. Comment. This story is a powerful reminder of how complex life can be. It really makes you think about the importance of self-respect in every relationship you have. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-preservation. Your kindness is a precious gift, so be sure to share it with those who truly honor it. Every choice we make carries weight and responsibility toward the people in our lives. True healing often begins when we decide we deserve more than a life built on disrespect. It takes strength to close a painful chapter so you can start writing a new one. Ultimately, choosing your own peace is one of the most courageous decisions you can make. I hope this encourages you to protect your inner peace above all else. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.